very similar to, like, if you have a gluten intolerance,
which I
right?
do.
Right. And I was like, I think you said that at one of the interviews. I did my homework, right? So if you kept going out to Italian food and you kept eating bread and you felt like shit afterwards, you'd be like, maybe it's the chef. Maybe they didn't wash my hands. Maybe they didn't like my seasons. They spit in the food. You know,
I'm sure that's happened. I don't like to think about it.
you were very likable. Um,
Thank you.
and I so without that explanation, you might just keep doubling down on this thing, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and then just keep failing and feeling bad and feeling worse. But if you realize, and sometimes it takes that outside person to say, hey man, listen, you are sick for 3 days every time we go out for Italian. What if you tried not eating gluten for a minute? Just see what happens, right? Do a test. You try the rice noodles next time. You don't feel sick for 3 days. You go, whoa, maybe I'm not broken. Maybe there's just something about how my brain and body works that has me show up in the world differently. And unfortunately, the world is filled with gluten, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you've got to make a lot of intentional choices to navigate that. But once you know what's up, then you've got that playbook to navigate the world. Like, you go on the gluten-free forums, you're like, here are the 11 best restaurants in Chicago
Yeah.
that are gluten-free. And you're like, it's like, oh my God, it's like in Wizard of Oz when she opens the door and it's color. You're like, life can be rich again.
That was when I found gluten-free pizza in Chicago for the first time, like 10 years ago. It
Right?
was like heaven opened up, an angel came down and delivered that pizza to me.
There's nothing
It's
like
like no more cardboard tasting Udi's gluten-free
yeah.
pizza. It's
Oh,
like
yeah.
brutal. No, that's a really good way to look at it. And one of the things that I find helpful but also challenging is social media has done such a good job of normalizing things like neurodiversity. But kind of like we talked about earlier, it also muddies the water a little bit. And so one of the things I like to ask when I have sort of a mental health expert of some sort on the show is, what are your thoughts on social media and the pros and cons of how it helps remove stigma, but at the same time can sort of muddy those waters? Like, how do we navigate that as general consumers of social media, people who want to be accepting and understanding, but also, everyone's a narcissist or, everything that may or may not be OCD or neurodiversity. You can kind of find something to support anything you think.
Yeah. Yeah, and you named it beautifully because it really is a double-edged sword. I mean, so I was identified gifted in second grade, and there was not a
And what
lot of.
does gifted mean, like
Ooh.
in your view?
So gifted is, it has a seat at the table for neurodivergence. There's a lot of pieces of the gifted brain that are different. From a measurement perspective, it's an IQ score of 130 or higher. So that's two standard
Okay.
deviations above the mean. It's in the 98th percentile. So it is a significantly different thing. Now you'll notice I use the word different, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
there's this perception out there that gifted means better, and I don't think that's true. I think that
It's different.
it's just I often use the metaphor. It's like if you had a buddy who was 6'10", right? Your buddy's 6'10". He can't buy pants at Target. Target does
No.
not sell pants for
I'm
someone.
6'5". I can barely buy
Right.
pants at Target. So someone who's 6'10", yeah.
Yeah. And that is several standard deviations above the mean for the average American male in height, which I believe is 5'10". So
It's
I'm
5'10".
6 foot, so I'm really close to average. You are somewhere in either high average or superior based on those measures, right? But no one
Let's
is
go with
saying,
superior.
I like it, sounds better, right? But no one is saying that Nick is superior compared to another person. Your height is just higher than the average person, so thus you need different things.
Mm.
So gifted has a lot of baggage around that. Um, but
Well, I
because
even think when I was a kid, gifted was almost like it wasn't like negative, but it was almost like, oh, this person in the class is gifted. And it was kind of a label that would almost make you think differently about them or less than of them.
absolutely,
Is
yep,
that okay?
yeah. It's like, this person's going to be your boss someday, so be nice to them now, which always translated as beat the shit out of them on the playground now.
Show him
Give
who's
them,
boss
yeah,
now.
give them some school trauma. That'll help. Uh, you know, and it's really, being gifted is so much more than being smart, right? It comes with a lot of social challenges and emotional challenges and sensory challenges, which we've discussed. And that, and certainly growing up in the 90s, that was not a thing that they told me. It was just, oh, you're really smart. You're going to go to Harvard
Mm.
someday. I was like, neat. I don't know. I'm
What's
9 years
Harvard?
old. What does that mean to me, right?
Yeah.
I know I could do Legos faster than most people, and that I really
Okay.
always was good at word searches, right? And those things were cool until they were really, really not cool. Until they really made my
Mm.
life a lot harder. Um, so that journey through always feeling different, that journey of, there wasn't a lot of accessible information. Now we've got the almost the opposite problem where there's so much information, and that
Hmm.
includes misinformation, right? There are very popular TikTok channels that are like, you can, giant air quotes, cure your ADHD by not eating red dye 40, right? Or if you have more alkaline water, you won't be autistic. And it's just like, listen, these are brain differences, right? This
Hmm.
isn't like, oh, I caught a cold and I need to take some ibuprofen. This
Right.
is, it's like if you were diabetic, right? You take medicine to manage something, but your body just processes insulin differently.
Hmm.
So it's so important to have that knowledge out there. But what I tell my clients, especially when I talk to young people, is like, listen, bring your questions, bring your TikToks, because if they're right, I am happy to reinforce that and amplify that message. If they're wrong, let me tell you what they're missing, right? Because
Mm.
I would rather someone come to me with a thing and I can send them in the right direction rather than gatekeeping that and be like, no, that's not what OCD is, you fool. And
Well,
then,
and if that's another therapist, another psychologist on there, then you're like fighting your peers over
yeah,
that.
oh, let me tell, I mean, so one of the ways that giftedness shows up specifically in the neurodivergent space is the concept of what we call twice exceptionality. So that's when
Okay.
you're gifted and you have a second learning difference. So in my case, gifted and ADHD, right?
Okay.
And I was in a meeting with a very, very wealthy district, very fancy and well-respected school psychologist. And the guy looks at me, he's like, Matt, a kid can't be gifted and autistic. And I'm like, really? I got several dozen examples I can give you, boss. And he's like, he looks at me, he's like, you haven't been in the field long enough. And I looked at him and I was like, you've been in the field too long.
Too long. Yeah. It's
Right?
initially what I thought when you said that. I was like, this guy, I was going to ask, how old is he? How long has he been in the field?
I mean, like he was in his 80s then. I don't know if he's still practicing, but I mean, just the field continues to move and evolve, and we must move and evolve with it.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, I mean, sometimes I'm fighting my own colleagues. Thankfully,
Yeah.
most of the time I'm fighting is the wrong word. I am trying to educate lay people, right? I think
Yeah.
most people don't know what they don't know. So if you can give them that with empathy and grace, they're like, oh, check that out. Right? I did
Hmm.
a neurodiversity talk to this hedge fund finance bro thing here in New York City, and you wouldn't think they were down with it, but like I was like, listen, guys, you've probably gotten some misinformation about this. Let me tell you how this thing shows up, and let me see how it can make your business better. By the end of the hour and a half, they were like, "Oh my god, this makes so much sense." Because I didn't talk to them like they were idiots, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, I always, one of my psychology go-to expressions is, you can't shame someone into feeling better,
Mm.
right? So like, if I
Yes.
shamed these guys, these bros, they would have been like, well, get out of here. We don't want
They get
to,
defensive.
right? When you're defensive, you can't listen, you can't learn. But by saying, here's what you might think, and here's another way to think about that stuff, then we don't call people out, we call people in, right? We called them in,
Mm.
and several,
I need
several
to
of
do
them,
more of that.
yeah,
I call people out sometimes.
it's hard. It's so hard, you
It
know.
is.
because it takes time and energy and effort. And sometimes it is just a lot easier to be like, you're wrong, put them on blast, right?
Yep. Yep.
You just send
Yep.
them my way. I'll be the soft
I'll,
landing.
I'll do that. Like I don't have the capacity to be soft here. So I'm going to just send you to Dr. Matt and he'll ease you in.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to this clip from the full episode of Eyes Wide Open. Please like and subscribe for daily clips and new episodes that drop every Tuesday. I appreciate you.